Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another session of Londoniyyah. Today we're going to be talking about Qadiyaniyah or Ahmadiyya, which is a religion in and of itself which has started in India, which makes a claim to Islam, in fact. So those adherents of that religion claim to be Muslim, but like many other religions in the world, have not been seen as such by the majority, if not all, major Muslim denominations. So we're going to start with as we do as part of tradition here in Londoniyyah, the poem, and then we're going to come back and we're going to make this into a seminar type discussion where we have some very special guests from different places of the land and indeed outside of the land today to contribute to today's session. We'll start with the poem.
فصل الرد على القاديانية والقاديان منهج به ردى نبيهم غدا غلام أحمد وردهم بقوله ما كان محمد أعظم به بيانا فكلهم قرى بكسر التاء لخاتم لا عاصم القراء وخاتم بكسرها الأخير ورد ذا عليهم عسير.
We'll start with that. I mean, clearly the main nullifier which we have put forward in many of the debates that we have done of their claim that there will be another prophet after Prophet Muhammad is that which is mentioned in the Quran very clearly, that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is Khatam and Khatim in Nabiyyin. He is the final prophet. And the Prophet ﷺ himself, he said that himself in many hadiths, La Nabiyya Ba'di, or there's no prophet after me. That should really be enough, and that should be sufficient, to be honest with you, to close the discussion on whether there can be a prophet or someone who claims to be a prophet after the Prophet Muhammad. But of course, it isn't for many of the adherents who employ a very peculiar type of eisegesis onto the Quranic narrative to try and warp the verses of the Quran and distort the meanings therein. We're going to start with, I think it's probably most sensible and appropriate and pertinent here to start with something about Ghulayim Ahmad, which we can call him Ghulayim as for short, تصغير لشأنه وله كمان. So we'll start with something about the Sirah Dhatiyya, about the biography of this individual. Haji, how are you?
Assalamu alaikum, how are you?
Salam.
Allah very big. How are you today? How's everyone?
Yes, not bad.
Allah very big.
Not bad.
Good to be here. Thanks
Yeah.
for inviting me. And inshallah, we'll start off by his birth. So he was born in 1835 at the time when the Sikh Empire was ruling northern India.
Yes.
So he was born at that particular time. There's no sort of educational background that he had. His father was a soldier in the Sikh Empire, and thereafter, I think those who know history, the British East India Corps Company came and took over that region. So Mirza Ghulam Ahmad was born in 1835 in the reign of the Sikh Empire when they were ruling. Their leader was Maharaja Ranjit Singh, and thereafter, obviously, the British Empire took over. So he has no religious schooling. So his father enlisted in the British Army. He was himself a clerk. His father didn't really teach. There wasn't no predominant madrasa in Qadian. Qadian's in eastern Punjab.
Okay.
So when the partition happened, obviously that side went into the Indian territory rather than the Pakistani territory.
Okay.
So there wasn't much religious education that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad had. And then from there, obviously later on, when his father passed away, he ventured on a particular extremism when it comes to his claims, and we'll get to that later. So basically, he didn't have much religious education, and his father really, sent him off to just work in, administration as part of the British Empire. So that's just basically his early life, and we'll get to inshallah about what he claimed later on.
Where do you get a lot of these sources then? What are you looking at to find this out?
The source, most of the source is from Siratul Mahdi, which was written by his son.
Okay.
Siratul Mahdi. But he wrote books which we'll get into. One of his main books was Burhan al-Ahmadiyya, which he wrote himself. But there's really a ghost writer, script writer, basically, at the behind the scenes.
What language was his book? All of them has
He had obviously ability to write Persian, because at that time when the Mughals were in power, Persian was predominantly, obviously, the...
Well, some books written in Arabic as well, right?
His books, not that I recall. I think the one book that I know, Burhan al-Ahmadiyya, I think was sort of a mixture between the two, Farsi, Urdu and Arabic. But me personally, I'm not sure whether he wrote Arabic per se.
Okay.
Because of his background. I know he wrote Jesus in India and other books, but nothing obviously connected to any ilm al-shari.
Okay. Anyone else have anything to add here on the on Ghulam Ahmad, his upbringing, something about his life, something that you have researched?
I actually had a question.
Yeah.
What you were saying.
Okay.
You
Put
mentioned
on.
Yeah. So you mentioned that he went into administration with the British. Yeah. I mean, like, is there like, what was he doing at that moment in time? Because obviously there's a lot made of his connection to the British, and people say that he was basically like a colonialist project. Yeah. So what exactly was he doing in that administration?
His father got him that job. He was from Qadian. He went to Sial Court, which, if you notice, partition, and that's on the Pakistan, Punjab. Yeah. So he went there just to work in administration, to collect taxes for the British. So his father got him that role. So there was always a British imperialist project at the get-go. His claims were later on in his life. So when he claimed to be prophet was at the last stage. So he claimed to be obviously various things, a Mujaddid, the promised Messiah, the Mahdi, and then later the last stage was his claim to prophethood. So yeah, he was just basically a clerk collecting taxes on behalf of the British. But his father got him that job.
Was he married at the time?
He got married young, I think at 12, 13. Yeah, in Qadian. But I don't know much of his kids. I know the second Khalifa was his son. Yeah. But the main guy behind the scene was, and I think I forgot his name, but I'll get that later. But yeah, he had kids early.
All right. So the second thing we want to talk about are some of the things when he became, he claimed to be the Mahdi, or when he claimed to be Jesus, or Jesus' second coming, or not Jesus himself, but their theology. In fact, let's start with this. Not Jesus, of course, Ibn Maryam. How do we? And let's get someone else first, and then come back. How do we explain the theology? Who wants to venture to try and explain the theology of the Ahmadiyya? Yeah.
Right. Basically the narrative comes from the Gospel of Mark.
Okay.
Because what they do is they take in Mark it says that Jesus was only on the cross for 3 to 6 hours, which isn't enough to actually kill someone. Mm-hmm. And also there's no explanation. They didn't mention that his legs were broken, which they do to hasten the person's death. Mm-hmm. So that's not enough to actually kill someone. Mm-hmm. So basically they're taking that narrative and they weave it into the in his book Jesus in India. Yeah. They basically say that he had some kind of, Jesus was taken off the cross alive. He was in what's called a swoon state.
Yes.
So it's like catatonic.
Yep. And
he was somehow revived in the cave.
Yes.
He had a special ointment prepared. They don't know whether it was before the crucifixion or afterwards, but some guy called from Arimathea, Joseph of Arimathea, he brought the ointment, and after 3 days, Jesus was able to recover and give his last sermon to his disciples. And then he moved across into a town which is in Kurdistan. It's called Nisibis. He travelled first of all there, which is in modern-day Turkey, and with some disciples.
Really?
And from there, he met the king of the area, and he heard about the Jewish populations, the lost tribes of Israel. Mm-hmm. From there, he went to Persia, and he continued his travels through to Afghanistan, where he met the lost tribes of Israel. So he actually makes the claim. This is Mirza Ghulam. He's putting this in his book. Yeah. Further, he moves from Afghanistan into India. where he actually settled. They say that Jesus settled in India, in the Kashmir region, and he found which were the remnants of another lost tribe of Israel, and he died eventually at the age of 130. And there's an actual tomb there to this date. There's a particular saint's tomb that they claim is the last resting place of Jesus. So that's what the claim is made in his book as well.
Okay, fantastic. That was a very good summary there. Mehdi, you've been away for some time, so you haven't done the research, have you? Have you done any research yourself?
About the claim that he's the Mahdi and
Right, yeah.
Messiah.
Can you cover that?
So going to their page,
Yeah.
I'm gonna read what they believe.
What was this? In what?
From the Ahmadiyya page.
Is that al-Islam.org?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So yeah, okay. Their official website.
Yeah.
Okay. So they've got an official website. They've got an official caliphate.
Yeah.
And obviously now there's being some allegations, some
Yeah.
sexual
Official
allegations.
YouTube channel as well. They have
An official YouTube channel as
Yeah.
well. Okay.
So they say from the tradition, the Holy Prophet is evident that the promised Messiah was to be follower of the Holy Prophet, and one of the traditions tell us the Mahdi is no other than the Messiah in Ibn Majah. Another tradition says, how would it be with you when the Son of Mary will descend among you, and you will have a leader raised from among you? Which to me, so it's Bukhari, Kitab al-Nabiyya, chapter Nuzul Isa bin Maryam. Which to me that doesn't indicate any of that. I don't know if you. I mean,
You'll find a lot of tenuous evidence.
to be fair, from I don't want to say nothing, but this is like dealing with kids, claiming, "Oh, today I woke up and I saw a flower, and I played this game of she loves me, she doesn't love me, she loves me, and she loves me." Claims such as Ghulam Ahmad name is Ahmad, Prophet name is Ahmad, therefore he must be the Messiah. This kind of claims.
Yep.
So
Yep.
the same applies here, because from my understanding, how would be with you when the Son of Mary will descend among you, and you will have a leader raised from among you. So I understand from this that the Son of Mary, Jesus, will come, and we will have a leader between us, which is the Mahdi. That's what I understand. What I understand is these two traditions leave no doubt that the Messiah himself will be the Mahdi. I don't know how, but
Okay, good. At this point, what is a really good evidence against them from Islam? Because let's first of all get the position right. What are they saying? Are they saying that he is al-Mahdi and he's the son of Mary, the Messiah, not the son of? They are not claiming, from what I understand, that he is Jesus.
They're implying it.
Are they claiming that he is Jesus?
No, they believe Jesus is dead,
Okay,
and
right.
he is
The son of Mary,
the
right?
son of Mary.
So they're not claiming that he is Jesus.
No,
Okay, good. Not the same Jesus that's in the Quran.
no.
I don't think this sounds.
Yeah. Go on, Haji.
Okay, so
No, I'm asking. So he's the son of Mary, but he's not Jesus.
the second comment. So Jesus died. Jesus just passed away
Yeah.
in Kashmir, in Srinagar. Okay, so
Sorry.
yeah. So the brother added, the tomb is called Yudasa in Srinagar. So the connection is that they use the hadith in Ibn Majah. They said there's no Mahdi apart from Isa ibn Maryam.
Right.
So the return, all the signs according to them, they built a white minaret. You know the hadith, the famous hadith that Jesus will come down? They actually built a white minaret in Qadian to indicate that this was Mirza Ghulam Ahmed. So the correlation, this is where it gets confusing, because I don't understand how they could apply Jesus, the son of Mary, onto Mirza Ghulam Ahmed. This is just totally baffling.
What are they saying? Are they saying they're not saying he's Jesus?
So they're saying that he is the
Second, he's
Messiah.
he's a different Messiah.
he's the Messiah and Mahdi at the same time. So
But he's not the Jesus of the Quran.
He's no.
They're not.
Basically, they implying that what the hadiths say and what the Quran says, that instead of Jesus, it's gonna be him. So
Yeah.
that's all. Jesus is dead,
Yeah.
and there will be a Messiah, but this Messiah will not be Jesus. It will be Mirza.
Right. Now, going back to the question, we'll leave it open to the participants.
I understand from this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Understand from it. Yeah, tell us what you understand first. Yeah.
We claim in Islam that there's going to be minor science and there's going to be major science.
Yep.
And we've seen some minor science, and then the major science include the coming of the Mahdi and the coming of Dajjal and the coming of Messiah, so Isa, and just after that, the judgment or the end of the war. So, and this is Sahih. There are Sahih hadiths, and so this would mean that if it's true that this Mirza or Ghulam, he's the Mahdi and he's the Messiah, why are we still waiting for the day of judgment?
Yeah, okay, I got your point. Good question. Good point.
But what they imply is, what they say is, we have to take all metaphorically.
Yeah.
But it will still mean that if the Messiah is here and the Mahdi is here, and my question would be, okay, so the Quran is wrong and the day of judgment, why exactly is it not?
Why is it not happening like the Prophet said, or like a pearl, like pearls from a pearl necklace? Okay, it's a good point. I think it's a good point, but I think there's more damning hadith that disturbs their narrative, which especially relating to the fact that in the second coming, when the Messiah comes, something is going to happen, or there's going to be some kind of interaction between him and hold on.
So the ahadith about the end of times is very, very clear. Anyone to read those ahadith that the Mahdi and Isa ibn Maryam are not the same person.
Yeah.
Because they have interactions. I believe in the masjid. I'm not sure. I can't remember if it was Syria or Aqsa. That when he comes down.
So your name is Mahdi. You want to add to it?
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
Do you know
Do you want to say it?
There's the hadith of Rasulullah where the Mahdi is leading the salah of the Muslims, and then Isa ibn Maryam is in like the first saf, and then the Mahdi comes back for Isa ibn Maryam to lead, but then Isa ibn Maryam says, no, you lead, because you're the Mahdi. It's a clear example of the difference between the two. It's not the same person.
Yeah, so the Mahdi will lead the Messiah in the end of days. But he's, according to their theology, they're one and the same person.
Yeah. But he's clearly two different people.
Yeah, they're going to be two different people, so which does cause real disturbance. Like, they would have to metaphorize it, right?
The entire narrative rests on the case that Prophet Jesus actually passed away on the cross. So unless they can bulldoze that into the narrative, their whole Aqidah falls on its face.
I agree with that, but I think they make it a point of focus. Like if you speak with some of these Qadianis and stuff, they'll want you to focus on whether or not Jesus died. And they'll even bring you aqwal from tafsirs and what does the word mutawaffika, mumituka, and what is mutawaffika, because the Quran says inni mutawaffika wa rafi'uka ilay, I have taken you and so on, and then usually the back and forth is like, well, Allah yatawaffa al-anfus hina nawmiha aw mawtiha wallati lam tamut fi manamiha, right? So there's tawaffi in maut, and it's also in sleep. So this is usually the back and forth we have. We say the word is clearly not just mean death, because it says that وَالَّتِي لَمْ تَمُتْ فِي مَنَامِهَا, the ones that don't die, and the word tawaffi is still there, right? So this is usually the back and forth we have. It doesn't have to mean death, but this is where they have the most leverage, Because what we come back and say, well, actually, it doesn't matter whether or not he died. Because that's not what the claim really just starts there. It doesn't mean if we believe that Jesus died, which we don't believe, but if we believe that Jesus died for the sake of argument, it doesn't mean your religion is right and our religion is wrong. It doesn't have creedal disproving or creedal proving implications, because you still have so many layers of things to prove. So when if you spend an hour speaking to a Qadiani, and 30, 40 minutes of it is speaking about whether or not Jesus died, it will make it seem as if they have leverage which they don't actually have. So instead of focusing on whether or not Jesus died, let's focus whether or not it's possible for there to be a new prophet. Let's focus on whether or not it's possible that that new prophet is the Mahdi and the second coming of the Messiah at the same time. Because these things are more damning. These things are more qat'i. But on this point, I think there's something else which is more damning and qat'i, which is recently explored, which is the false prophecies of Ghulayim. He has made some false prophecies saying things that are going to happen in the future, which we have seen have not happened. In fact, the opposite of this thing has happened. Like the one that I've come across, and we've seen, I've actually made a video about it as well, is there was a particular woman that he was in love with called Muhammadi Begum. Yeah. And he said, I'm paraphrasing here, but that he will marry her. And he put his credibility on the line by saying that he'd never married her. So this is something that's either happening or it didn't happen. And it didn't happen, which means he lied. But if he's speaking on behalf of God, how can he say that something is going to happen and the opposite of it happened? It's the equivalent of, in the Quran where it says, غُلِبَتِ الرُّومُ فِي أَدْنَى الْأَرْضِ هُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ غَلَبِهِمْ سَيَغْلِبُونَ. It's like it's the equivalent of the Persians beating the Romans. That's what it's the equivalent of. It completely undermines the narrative.
I'll give you one example as
Please.
well, just one simple, to show you that he claimed revelation.
Yes.
He claimed a lot of things. And one example would be he wrote in Jesus in India, which I've got the book here. He mentioned a narration. And in the book, he mentioned the narrator of the hadith as Abdullah ibn Umar. Well, if you go to the book, Kanzul Ummal, and you go to Tarikh al-Khabir of Bukhari, the narrator is actually Abdullah bin Amr bin As.
SubhanAllah, he didn't even know the narrators.
And this is in Jesus in India, and this is, obviously I've got it here. He claims here, and in the same book, volume 6, page 51, Abdullah bin Umar reports. Now if he is a prophet, and he gets revelation,
he doesn't even know who's reported it.
Between Abdullah bin Umar and Abdullah bin Amr.
It's poor scholarship.
It's basically ridiculous. How can a prophet make such a so-called prophet, make such a basic mistake? Now, if I've done a video on it, and one of the cheerleaders mentioned that no, but in the Urdu print in Kanzul Ummal, there was a misprint, or he had a wrong copy. Well, if he's getting revelation, he should rely on copies, then should he?
Absolutely.
He should know that. Hold on, yeah.
Absolutely.
It's Abdullah bin Amr bin As. He should know that. He said, hold on, there's a misprint.
This is really powerful.
Very powerful.
This is a very powerful point.
Very powerful point. And that just this one evidence alone, just basically refutes Qadianism in a nutshell.
Wallah, he's finished. Because how can a prophet, that you're saying that he's gotten the narrator wrong? Yeah. So if God is speaking to you, this is not a matter of dunya, this is a matter of deen. It's not like entum alam bi umur dunyakum. Like, it can't be that situation. Because that could be an argument you can put forward. But this is a matter of religion. Yeah.
And he's narrating this in his book, Jesus in India, to argue that Jesus passed away or lived in India or in Srinagar or in Kashmir. And on top of that as well, which we need to add, is that the Qadianis also believe that Maryam alayhi salam died in a place of, she accompanied Isa alayhi salam on the way to Kashmir in India. And she passed away in a city called Murray.
What's it called?
Murray.
Murray.
M-U.
Yeah, I know. This is where Sabura's from.
Yeah, the recent tragic event happened there. But she's passed away and buried there.
Yeah.
So it just shows to the extent of stupidity that they will go to. That Mary, or Maryam alayhi salam, is buried in Murray, which is in the Punjab province. And then
it's really interesting that it's like a desperation to try and create an Indo-centric religious narrative.
Thank you.
Same thing with Sikhism. It's like we've seen this one in the previous session. We talked about how like Sikhism has now become a very Indo-centric religion. Where's the dhikr, or where is the mention of all the other nations or all the other places? This is one of the evidences of Islam being the truth.
Of course.
Because you don't find in it the Arabian Peninsula being emphasized in the Quran.
No, not at all.
You don't find that at all, in fact.
Not at all.
Which shows you how universalistic It is.
And on top of that, the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned many events in Asham,
Yeah.
way away from his
Hind,
territory,
Sind.
in Hind, or they're talking about the conquest of Hind, talking about Misr as well. You know, so it just shows it's not restricted to Jazirat al-Arab.
No way,
And
yeah.
that shows the Prophet ﷺ's prophecy was from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he was a true prophet.
Yes, but they're forcing the narrative to an Indo-centric narrative,
Yeah, of course.
which shows you the hand of man in this whole equation. Yeah.
Can I just mention something? There was a journalist called Nicholas Notovich, and he wrote a book in 1894, which was 6 years before Jesus in India, before Qadian wrote his book.
Yes.
And the subject of his book was Jesus in India.
Right.
So this was 6 years
Oh,
before.
wow.
Yeah. So this guy, Nicholas Notovich, he was a Russian war correspondent. And 6 years before the guy made his, Qadian made his, his declarations in his book, which was also called Jesus in India, contemporary scholars actually looked into the claims of this Notovich and dismissed it as a hoax. So this can't be, he must have plagiarized it. Qadian must have plagiarized it.
Just, I've done a video on that.
Did you as well?
Yeah, I've done a video on it. It's called Debunking, what's it called? The narrative that Isa is buried. The book's called Saint Isa. So it's called Saint Isa. Nicholas Notovich was a Russian, there was a spy as well. And the narrative goes...
Was he working with the British?
Allah A'lam.
okay.
But what happened was, and also it was followed up, that he went to one of the Buddhist temples, and he had a motorcycle incident.
Was Nicholas
Notovich.
Okay.
And he had a motorcycle incident, and he went there to get treated. And then somehow he was going, when he got, healed, he obviously was on the way back, but then he mysteriously went to the temple and heard about this narrative about Saint Isa, and the book is here, just here. So there's various sort of conspiracies that he plagiarized this narrative from Nicholas Notovich. On top of that as well, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad claiming that, being the prophet of God was the final straw. So that was done later. When all the Muslims of scholars of India heard his nonsense, they got together and they disparaged him. They go, this is kufr. But he was protected by the British imperialists in India, so nothing was really sort of followed up. He was known famously for his debates, by the way. That's how he got his recognition. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad was known for his debates with Christians. And then from there...
I hope this doesn't happen to any of our guys. They get a few...
No, but he's... At the end of the day, one can see through this, nonsense. And they've fooled, unfortunately, especially in our region, Indo-Pak, they've got a lot of following, and it's based.
They say about 20 million people worldwide, right?
Yeah. This is just to obviously because they want international recognition. So if they say they've only got like 5 million, no one will take them seriously, and this is was the result.
Well, 20 million worldwide is, putting it in with the heavyweights or with the big religions.
Yeah. Like you could say
non-existent,
Sikhism,
right?
obviously being a 300-year-old religion, it only has 20 million subscribers or subscribers to. And we're talking about Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, who passed away in 1904, not even, over 100 years, and he got 20 million. No, where's this numbers come from, to be honest? All exaggerated.
Just to say some things on this individual, because obviously we're talking about this person, but this is, as we're mentioning some of the stuff about him, and I looked into some of his stuff with prophecies as well. Like, after when the Prophet ﷺ died, and then you had like these other people that started lying and talking about claiming prophecy after him. Yeah, like the attitude of the Sahaba. It's to feel a level of almost like ghayra for the Prophet ﷺ, that he is the final Nabi, and somebody else is coming out and claiming prophethood. So with the prophecies, like there's night and day between the prophecies of the Prophet ﷺ and the prophecies of this guy. The Prophet ﷺ is making a number of prophecies, mentioning specific details, and his accuracy is 100%. But with this guy, like, honestly, I don't even have what I found. I don't even have enough time to mention how many bad prophecies he had. So you had the one that you mentioned, which is the Muhammadi Begum one. Yeah. But he also said things like, listen to this. He says, it is God's intention. So he's speaking on behalf of Allah now. Yeah. That he will bring 2 ladies in my wedlock. One will be a virgin and the other a widow. He never married a widow. He says that I will die in either Mecca or Medina. He never stepped foot in either city. Afterwards,
That's enough. That's enough to nullify his.
Afterwards, he sort of did like after the fact, he tried to kind of, patch it together. So he did basically ta'wil of, he said that, I'm going to vanquish my enemies and attract love and reverence from the people. He didn't, obviously. He's, as we said, he hasn't really, because with the Prophet ﷺ, where his ummah went and what happened, he was trying to say a similar thing's going to happen with him. But that, of course, never happened. And this really finishes him, because he says this himself. These are his own words. He says, "To judge my truthfulness or lies, there is no better test than my prophecies." He says that, "Let it be known to unbelieving persons that my truthfulness or falsehood will be judged by my prophecies. There is no other touchstone for it." So by his own admission, he's a liar.
Yes. I mean, I don't know why anybody would follow him after that. How could anybody follow him after that?
Just to add as well, the main evidence that they have, that they use and they, spread viciously, is the tafsir of Ibn Abbas.
Okay.
Where he said on the sort of ayat, and he explained it, mumituk, is that he died. Now, as you explained about mutawaffiq, etc.
Yeah.
Now I've got a narration here, and this from Ibn Abbas, the same person. So let's sort of open this up, because if you're going to use that, let's see his other aqwal. Okay. And under the verse, that he is the sign of the hour. Okay, he's the sign of the hour. Ibn Abbas said, قال هو خروج عيسى بن مريم قبل يوم القيامة.
Wait, on this verse, إنه علم للساعة, there's two qira'as, right? علم وعلم? Yes. There's two qira'as, yeah.
And then in another narration, Ibn Abbas also say, نزول عيسى بن مريم. So if he believed he died, think about it now. He's saying mumituk. So they used this and said he died. Isa alayhi salam has now passed away. Why would Ibn Abbas also say he would come back before the day of judgment?
Yes.
He would come back.
Say that one more time.
So under that explanation, Ibn Abbas says, هو خروج عيسى بن مريم قبل يوم القيامة.
Aha. Oh yeah.
Before the day of judgment.
Yeah.
Now, on top of that as well, there's another riwayah which also says, نزول عيسى بن مريم. Now, Isa alayhi salam descending, if he died, why would Ibn Abbas say nuzul?
Oh yeah.
He's already passed away.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And this is the Tariq of Dimishq, Tariq of Dimishq of Ibn Asakir. And there's plenty more as well. There's plenty more. Ibn Kathir also says, because they believe the Isa alayhi salam and the Mahdi are one person. So Ibn Kathir in his Nihayatu, في الفتنة والملاهم, he's talking about فصل في ذكر المهدي الذي يكون في آخر الزمان. So this is Ibn Kathir explaining it. And he says, أنه يكون في آخر الزمان. So he's talking about Imam Mahdi. Then he says, وأظن ظهوره يكون قبل نزول عيسى بن مريم. So hold on here.
Yes.
He's separating the two.
Yes.
He says his appearance, his emergence would happen before the emergence of Isa bin Maryam, separating these two persons.
Who's saying this?
This is Ibn Kathir.
Ibn Kathir.
Ibn Kathir. So they claim that Isa alayhi salam and al-Mahdi is one person in essence. Basically, he is the promised Messiah, and he is the second coming of Isa alayhi salam. So Ibn Kathir, classical Orthodox scholarship, refutes that position. And this is one where there's plenty more, but ultimately, I'll say he's a Dajjal. Honestly, he is one of the imposters that the Prophet prophesied about, the 13 imposters. And that they would allege that they are Rasul. Nabiyyu, is it Nabiyyu? يزعم أنه رسول الله, is it? Or
I don't know that.
يكون في آخر الزمان دجال.
So he's a Dajjal min al-Dajjala.
Dajjal min al-Dajjala. Mini Dajjal. Okay? So, yeah, Allah barik feek.
Okay. So, in fact, quite unusual and ironic, because he wanted to market himself as someone who was against the Dajjal. But he ended up being one of the Dajjals himself. Anything else anyone wants to add on these points before we pray Aisha and close the door on the chapter on the great impostor, the Ghulayim? Yeah, we started with the verse. We mentioned it already, yeah. I mean, it beggars belief that, this is in the poem, in fact. We started with it because the verse is in two qira'as, Khatam al-Nabiyyin and Khatim al-Nabiyyin. And with Khatam, they say it means, ring and this and that, and the seal, But Khatim actually, it cannot mean that. It just means the final and the end. And by the way, do you know how they try and respond to that? They get these aqwal and athar of Ali ibn Abi Talib saying, no, read it with the fath, not with the kasr. Do you see this? So, because there's two qira'as, it's Khatam al-Nabiyyin and Khatim al-Nabiyyin. Khatam and Khatim, yeah? And they know the implications of if Khatim is pronounced with a kasra, it destroys them completely. I mean, khatam is strong enough for us, but remember, these are ta'wil masters, the hermeneutical gymnastics team. You know, so you'll find metaphorizing is like on a different level with them. So they'll say, well, we have an athar of Ali ibn Abi Talib saying to someone, saying to him, read it with the fatha, not with the kasra. How would you respond to this before? How would anyone respond to that? The way I would respond to that is say, this does not negate the qira'ah with the kasra. Because, for example, we have many in the ulum al-Quran, going back to this point, because we've done nothing on the ulum al-Quran, we have many examples of a qari', of a rawi, of a sahabi, of a tabi'i, telling his student to read it one way and not another, and not intending by that the other way is false. And this, we can go back to the Sahaba. You know, when Umar ibn Khattab and Hisham ibn Hakam, and he said, this is the way that the Prophet Aqra'niha, and then he taught it to me like that. And then he took Hisham ibn Hakam, and the Prophet said, هَكَذَا نَزَلَتْ وَهَكَذَا نَزَلَتْ. This way it was revealed, and this way it was revealed. So we have a master key hadith, which tells us how to deal with all the variations, which is the hadith of أُنزِلَ الْقُرْآنَ عَلَى سَبْعَةِ أَحْرُفٍ. Yeah? Therefore, you can't nullify a qira'ah which is, at least you can say it's mashhur, if you want to use the term. It's been narrated by so many people. Yeah? You can't nullify it based on an athar. Anyway, which is stronger, the Quran or the hadith? The Quran or the athar? So you can't nullify it because, you heard Ali ibn Abi Talib say Khatam al-Nabiyyin and Khatam al-Nabiyyin. Wa otherwise, you would have to nullify the ayah of the Quran where it says, Inna shajarat al-Zaqum ta'amul athim. Because there's hadith of Ibn Mas'ud saying, say ta'amul fajr. But he was saying it by means of teaching, this is what the word means. There's many like that. But we were not going to, how do you recite this verse? Did you recite ta'amul athim or did you recite it ta'amul fajr? They know one of them, and it's not in any of the prints of the Quran, ta'amul fajr. Then we recite it the way it has come down to us. You cannot try and nullify and eliminate and remove the Quran from its place because it doesn't fit in with your narratives. And if they do this, in fact, it shows the extent to which they are willing to reject the Quran for their own beliefs. So not only are they doing ta'wil now, they're doing, not just yuharrifun al-kalima an mawadi'i, as the Quran states about, the previous nations, that they corrupt the word from its, but it's doing فَنَبَذُوهُ وَرَاءَ ظُهُورِهِمْ. They threw it behind their back. Now they're doing exactly, they have to do this. They have to remove parts of the Quran. So if they say, no, it can only be pronounced with khatam, not khatim, then you say, so you're doing فَنَبَذُوهُ وَرَاءَ ظُهُورِهِمْ. You're throwing the Quran away because it confronts your falsehoods. It confronts your narratives. It destroys. So the only way they can get out of this is through that. Otherwise, there's not a dictionary, Arabic dictionary on the face of the earth, which will not tell you that the word khatim, means the end, the final. He is the final prophet. La nabiyya ba'di. And of course, they have their ta'wilat for it, but this is the Quran. Any point you want to make?
Just want to add one more point, because the brother, Allah speak about Isa alayhi salam passing away at 120, etc. So I just want to add some context. So they got another so-called evidence that Imam Malik said that Isa alayhi salam passed away at 33 years old. Okay, so I just want to bring into context. This is Fathul Bari by Ibn Hajar, and under the وَقِيلَ مَعْنَا قَوْلُهُ مُتَوَفِّيكَ. So under that ayat, this is Ibn Hajar. He says, مِنَ الْأَرْضِ فَعَلَى هَذَا لَا يَمُوتْ إِلَّا فِي آخِرِ الزَّمَانِ. He won't die into the end of times. Then he says, وَإِخْتَلَفَ فِي عُمْرِهِ حِينَ رُفِعَ فَقِيلَ ابن 33. And also, وَقِيلَ 120, like he said, 120. Now we go to Imam Malik. This is another one they use. So I just want to make sure I've got this out there, because it's not just Ibn Abbas. They got Imam Malik's alleged statement. So this is Al-Bayanu wa Tahsil by Ibn Rushd. So he's quoting Imam Malik, and he says, كان عيسى بن مريم يقول, he was 33 years old, okay, ومات ابن 33 سنة. So this is what they go, look, Imam Malik said that he passed away at 33. Ibn Abbas said he passed away. Ibn Rushd comments and he said that he passed away at 33. معناه خرج من الدنيا ورفع إلى الله. So he passed away in the dunya and he was raised to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he didn't die, meaning as in death, buried in Kashmir, in Srinagar, and the so-called person who's buried there, his name is Yuz Asif. So he's totally twisted it. Then Ibn Rushd also says, subhanAllah, that he quoted the messenger, a hadith of the Messenger ﷺ that said, when Isa comes back, he will do Hajj and Umrah. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad did not do Hajj and Umrah.
No, even though
he didn't leave Qadian, or he went to Sialkot. He didn't leave the Punjab.
He didn't step foot in the Mecca Medina,
Yeah,
did he?
no, but he didn't leave. He didn't leave the Punjab.
Yeah.
Forget going elsewhere. He didn't leave the Punjab province. So we got a hadith there, here saying that Ibn Maryam would perform Hajj and Umrah, and he would place his ihram in a place called Bifajr Rawha. So another refutation against them that he didn't perform Hajj and Umrah once in his life.
One thing here on this point, just because on this point, because we mentioned a lot of them making reference to, because they're obviously operating or trying to at least operate within the tradition.
Of course.
They're claiming, that they have that they're within Islam. You must think like at some point they've done some intense research, finding all these statements and picking it out and that type of thing. But I think it's really it baffles me that they're quoting Ali ibn Abi Talib and Imam Malik, like these are people that would share their opinion. If Ali ibn Abi Talib was alive today, or Imam Malik and all these people, like they're claiming they're trying to give value to the Sunnah and that type of thing. They would have nothing to do with anyone who's claiming.
That's putting it lightly.
After
We should make a tradition today to call him. We should actually call him Ghulaym al-Kadhab, because it's like Ghulaym al-Kadhab, and I hope this laqab actually stays on him, because this is what they called him, Musaylam al-Kadhab. This is somebody who claimed prophethood after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam or during his time. He was called the Kadhab. Khalas. That's how they dealt with them. So this is how we deal with him. He is al-Ghulaym al-Kadhab. Yeah, go ahead. Ghulaym is tasghir ghulam, by the way. It's just like meaning to make him smaller in status. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I want to add that. We know in the Quran that the Quran says that God has perfected our deen. So, or they either believe in that our deen is perfected, or they don't believe in that, or they believe in the Quran.
That's a really good point.
Or they don't believe in the Quran. And the other thing is, let's just, for the sake of these arguments, we say that they meant to be a Messiah, they meant to be a Renaissance, like they call it. Why is it so ambiguous? Why wouldn't the Prophet talk about it more? Why we have so many questions?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So no, this is not something small.
Very ambiguous, isn't it?
This is something very big. Like we're talking about something. It's not someone will come and they're claiming to update, to guide again the Ummah. And even if that's true, like we mentioned before, there's 20 millions of them, or there's 10 millions or 15 million, whatever. Why didn't that reach all around the world with all the social media, all the information we have nowadays? And then
Carry on. I'll just hand my hand out, don't worry.
Yeah, I wanted to add that. Forgot my
No, you make a good point. It's go back to that Indo-centric nature of that religion, Punjab-centric, in fact. It was fertile ground after the Sikhism thing. People saw it was possible to invent new religions.
All I can see is, we throughout history we've seen a lot of people claiming to be the Mahdi, claiming to be this and that, some kind of prophet, and none of them had this repercussion. This only means that this only proves that this guy had some kind of backup that made him stay there, and a lot of resources, I would say, because otherwise the only way this stupid arguments, to say in a kind word, they will only work if you give something in exchange. Because I don't see someone with the right mind, believing in this kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, Haji, one more question. Say what you're going to say, and then I have a question. Yeah.
One thing you have to understand is the backdrop as well. That when the British took over, there was a rebellion called the Indian Rebellion of 1857.
Yes,
So
yes.
this
is a major rebellion.
Major.
Yeah.
When obviously the British India company
Against
obviously
the
took
Indian,
against the occupiers.
Yeah.
Was that? 1857. So what happened was, as I mentioned about his father being enlisted in, it was in the Sikh Empire, or part of the Sikh Empire, and they joined the British Empire. So there was a lot of imperialism or occupation.
Yeah, for sure.
So they used, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad was basically a pawn to sort of, one, he gave them legitimacy, two, he was protected. And
Can you elaborate upon this point?
Which one?
The one you're making, because they'll say, "What's the proof for all of this?"
Proof. Okay.
Yeah.
So the proof
Yes,
that we have that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad had British guards. He had a lot of British security officers that protected him, even to the point that when he was traveling, and I spoke to a former Qadiani who left that cult and joined Ahl Sunnah, that he went into the biography, translated it from Urdu because it's written in Urdu, Siratul Mahdi, and that has the full biography, which mentioned that he was very much protected by the establishment at that time, the British Raj. So the proof's there. It's just that they don't want to accept that they had a lot of investments, and even to this day, they collect a tax, membership tax.
Yeah. I know that.
Yeah. So 10% of your livelihood.
Yeah.
And if it's similar to
It can be done online now.
Yeah. It's similar to you can pay by direct debit as well.
Yeah.
That it's similar to the Nation of Islam. That if you don't pay your membership, they'll excommunicate you.
I actually just on this a story. I went to Ghana with Ali Dawa.
Yeah, that's in that. Yeah.
And but we there was some footage that we didn't show. We went to Tamale. There was a temple. There was a Ahmadiyya temple there.
Okay.
And we went outside. We spoke to the people. It was the fastest conversions we've ever done in our life.
Alhamdulillah.
With like 20 or 30 of them just become Muslim. Said, we told them just there can't be any new prophet, blah, blah, blah. And practically all of them became Sunnis in a matter of seconds or minutes even.
And it's a lot of financial, monetary investments as well.
It is, because
very much so.
Especially they're going to the developing world where people actually need money, bro.
Yeah.
And it's really unethical practice, to have to be honest and say. Because to go to a people and offer them jobs and stuff, but you have to be my religion and believe in these set of principles, which...
And they also go into countries where there's no Islam. People don't know about Islam.
Yes, that's true. I've seen that.
And what they do, they use Islam to convert them and to promote.
Yeah, and then they add that as a cherry on there. Yeah, and in fact we have been made aware of that, and we know exactly what countries and what islands they go to. Islands, by the way, and do that. We have been made aware of that, and we have a strategy in place for that as well. But I think the most important thing is to use social media as we are doing and speak about these things. Is there anything else you want to add on the British Empire's influence on him? Are there any declassified documents that you've come across, or any, or are we just inference making?
At the moment, I haven't come across it personally,
Yeah.
but there's a blog, Brother Bashir Ahmadi fact check blog, and he's translated many of their works directly from Urdu to English. So whoever's interested, please go check that out.
Yes.
There's a lot of information on there. But personally, myself, I haven't seen any sort of classified documents or confidential documents as such. But we go by the writing of his son, because Siratul Mahdi was written by his son.
Right.
There's a lot of damning information on there. Even the death of him in the toilet was from that book.
Is that okay? Can you tell us about that? Just.
Are we getting into that?
Yeah, please.
I've got it here.
So he's got something in common with Elvis Presley.
Yeah. So he went to he went to Lahore with his wife. He had some tea. Went back. And then he started complaining of, stomach pains. So back then, as you know, in the subcontinent, the early 20th century, when he needed to answer the call of nature, his wife placed some bricks, and he relieved himself. So obviously next to the bed, and then he was relieving.
That's not normal, is it?
No. So he's obviously he needs to go, obviously, so he can feel that it's coming. So he couldn't hold it in, obviously. Couldn't. He wouldn't have made it to the toilet. Yeah, he wouldn't have made it. Like, we could quickly run. He was coming out.
It's the equivalent of a potty for a child, right?
Yeah. Maybe
something like that.
if you give him.
I have to. Like, I've got a potty for my little child.
Yeah, so I have to start a newborn as well. So I've got the death here, and this.
It's a description of
Yeah, it's all here. If you go to the book, I don't want to go into
Is this Sirat al-Mahdi, yeah?
No, this not from Sirat al-Mahdi. This is another book by Nasir Ahmed on an account of the last days and the death of Hazrat in Persian means something respectable. Pious.
But we call him Ghulaym
Ghulam
al-Kadhab.
Dajjal, Kadhab. Mirza Ghulam Ahmed in Lahore with a brief history of Ahmadiyya building. So it's a full narrative. Sirat al-Mahdi has it, which is the main primary source, but this is also an account of that. And he just said like they brought the doctor in and he I think he died of cholera. Yeah, he died of
What was that?
Cholera. Yeah. That's it. So I'll read it here. The death of the Holy Imam. So treatment was started. I'm reading word for word verbatim, so I'm not lying. So don't think I'm being rude. Treatment was started immediately as the condition was quite critical. Everyone stayed on, but the pulse did not revive. Then Dr. Sutherland, a well-known physician, was also the principal of the Medical College Lahore. So he had doctors on standby, like that. So yeah. So it states that. I'll go into that. At 11 o'clock, he had a bowel motion, which made him very weak. Immediately, both Dr. Sayyid Muhammad Hassan Shah and Hazrat Maulana Nuruddin. Now, this Nuruddin is the ghostwriter. A lot of his works, he was affiliated to the Al Hadith movement. So a lot of his writings are from this guy. He became the first Khalif. Yeah.
And he became Ahmadi.
Perks.
Oh, okay.
So this Mirza Nuruddin was the first Khalifa, not his son. His son became the second. So Mirza Nuruddin was there. Were called. Some tonics were administered as it was believed that the illness was brought on due to intense work. Obviously lying. And sleep would bring relief. The physicians retired to their residence, but between 2 and 3 he passed another big loose motion, which caused so much weakness that no pulse could be detected.
How disgusting.
Yeah, it sounds disgusting. Imagine the smell as well. God forbid. So then he mentioned immediately Dr. Sayyid Mahmud Hassan Shah and Hazrat Maulana Nuruddin and Khawaja Kamaluddin were called. Dr. Mirza Yaqub Beg was also called in, but when he came in, the Holy Imam asked him to come near, and he said to him, so this is Mirza Ghulam Dajjal Kadhab, he said, I had a big loose motion, so prescribe some medicine. And he added, the right medicine comes by the will of God, so please prescribe a medicine and also pray. But then he died thereafter.
Wasn't he also buried there as well?
No, so see, yeah, so then they took a train. When he died, obviously, they couldn't revive him. Obviously, had to clean up the mess after, obviously, naturally. They took him by train to Qadian, and he's buried in a graveyard. I forgot the name. It's a special graveyard. And the ex-Qadiani told me that you have to pay an extra tax. So you could be buried in this heavenly graveyard in Qadian, in the eastern side of Punjab. So yeah, there's a lot of information to, in a short space of time. But he died while having a loose... well, he said himself, I had a big loose motion.
That was his last words? Those were his last words?
Yeah, that was his last words. Then he had a big loose motion and something happened.
How embarrassing.
I don't know, what can we say? I don't know, I'm Punjabi, so I don't know. Urdu, what would it be?
Are you Punjabi?
I speak Punjabi, but my father's from Kashmir and my mother's from the Punjab.
Also, what would you have said in that language?
Something like that. Something like that.
It sounds as pleasant as it probably sounds.
But he must have said it in a very agonizing tone. So I'm saying in a very sort of...
Well...
Yeah, so imagine his pain. But anyway, so that was
on that bombshell.
Let me add.
Oh, please. Yes.
Like he mentioned that he was buried away from the place of his death.
Yeah.
But we know that none of the prophets before was buried, was taken away from the place of the death. Even the Prophet Muhammad, he was buried in the same place. Do
you know? You're right, and do you know what it makes me think? It's like when you are confronted with an inauthentic, fraudulent person like him, a claimant to the Prophet. All it does is it raises the status of the Prophet. Like you think, like, look at this. Is this the story of someone who claims to be a prophet? No one can live up to that.
Just to add, the death of his big loose motion is also in Sirat al-Mahdi, volume 1, page 1011. So anyone who thinks I'm lying could go to Sirat al-Mahdi, which is written by his son. So there was even the hadith that they use, with the hadith in Tirmidhi about, Allah does not take a prophet except at the location. There is some du'f in there, but it's marfu' to Abu Bakr radhiyallahu anhu as well. And Bidayah wa Nihaya has it, and various other places as well.
Beautiful.
So if they probably use that, we'll say it's marfu' to Abu Bakr radhiyallahu anhu.
Mashallah, fantastic.
Can we send a letter to the Emir of Kabul?
Who?
Emir of Kabul, something like that.
Yeah.
And when you claim to be the Messiah, like tell him about his prophethood, and he wrote back in the same letter 2 words saying, "Come here," like come here and tell me in my face. If you
Really?
Yeah.
He was an outspoken character, like very, very, bold and aggressive. But at the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exposed him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala humiliated him. And now you find his followers try to... But they can't cover it up. They can't cover it up at all because it's there written. And his son really did us a favour, if you want to be completely honest, because he told the truth. He just put it out, said to Mahdi, here you go, this is how my father died. So you can't say it's like us making conspiracies. So, like you said, on that bombshell.
No, honestly, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for all of your contributions. I've certainly learned a lot today. And I'm sure, like people that are watching this from the Ahmadiyya school, we mean no harm. We actually ask you to come to the religion of Islam. This is not the religion of Islam. This is a miserable specimen of a human being who lived an inauthentic life and claimed to be something which he's not. And it should be, I'm sorry to say, it should be now admitted by yourselves as well. It's a money-making machine, this cult that you are in, and you must give it up and come into the religion of Islam, of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. We hope that, you come into Islam, and you may say, well, look how he's dealing with Ahmad al-Kadhab. Well, you and I would have no problem calling Musaylama a Kadhab. So if you should be granted such right, we shall also be granted such right. If you want to deny Guru Nanak as being a prophet and a guru, and may even have bad things to say about him, and call him inauthentic and fraudulent and a liar, then you must allow others to say all those other things about the fraudulent one, the kadhabun ashir, Ghulaym al-Kadhab. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi